Oh, hello, my Bill for 1000 Nation. How is everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's had a great day so far. If not, I hope it gets better from here. I've had one of those days where, whew, I hit myself in the head, the corner of the cabinet door, like quite hard. It's popping on it. It bled. It was horrible. Tears came to my eyes. I've slammed my finger in the door. It's just been one of those days. But if you're having a day like me, uh, just go bed. Yep. Yep. Let's go bed. All right. Let's get into it. Today's Mr. Ballin video is titled "The Bravest Kid in America." It was actually requested to me by a subscriber, and they have never failed me. So let's get into it. Go ahead, turn the lights down low, put on something comfy, cut up with someone special. Let's get spooky.
As you listen to today's absolutely epic story, remember the main character was a child when all of this happened. A child. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 2 or 3 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please continuously maneuver your vehicle right in front of the like button's car on the highway, and then turn on your blinker, but don't change lanes. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
I hate that, and I also hate people that are just like in such a hurry. Like they're just driving recklessly through traffic, then all of a sudden they pull in front of you, and you're like, they literally cut you off. You're like, slam on your brakes to keep from rear-ending them. And then they slow down. It's like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
All right, let's get into today's story. In 1937, the Japanese declared war on China and invaded their country. The United States, who was friends with China, initially did not intervene in fear of provoking Japan. But after the Japanese murdered hundreds of thousands of unarmed Chinese civilians and the Japanese attacked an American warship, the United States was forced to step in. American officials responded.
Yeah. There's those certain moments where you're just like, nah, we're gonna stay out of this. And then like, did it what? Oh, we've all been there. We've had those moments. So, you know, it happens. It happens. You have good intentions of staying out of stuff. Mind your own business. You're like, it'll be just outside our mind. We'll just look over here. Oh, yeah. You know. Then, yeah. We've all been there. And something stupid happens, and you're just like, well, and then you're stuck with that thing. If I would have stepped in sooner, would that have happened? It's a conundrum. It's one of those you're screwed either way. It's a no-win situation when it comes to wars. It really is.
To the Japanese aggression by placing serious economic sanctions and trade embargoes on Japan, believing this would cripple their war efforts in China, causing them to have to retreat. However, these sanctions and embargoes did not have this effect. Instead, they
just did do shit.
Just angered Japan and made them even more determined to hold their...
It's like, there's a hornet nest up there. Either I can spray it with some hornet spray, or I can poke it with this really big stick. As Americans, I'm not saying I speak for all of us, but I'm grabbing the stick, bro. Screw it.
Ground in China. Over the next few years, the United States and Japan attempted to negotiate some sort of settlement, but neither side would make any concessions, and so neither side would budge. A few years later, on the morning of Sunday, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese launched a surprise aerial attack on the American military base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. After the 2-hour attack was done, over 2,400 Americans were killed, with another 1,000 wounded, and 300 airplanes and 20 ships were either destroyed or significantly crippled. The Japanese had hoped this attack would goad the United States into lifting the sanctions and embargoes they had placed on them from back in 1937. But instead, all the Japanese did was
piss us off. All they did was piss us off. We might poke the hornet's nest with a stick, but good Lord, they was out there shooting with an AK, and it just really pissed us off. And we said, screw it. And I don't know what. I mean, they say don't poke the hornet's nest, but don't poke the bear either. We're the bear. Grr.
Into all-out war with them. One day after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States officially declared war on Japan, thus entering World War II. On the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Jack Lucas,
Casey,
like
are
every
you
other
okay?
American in the country, was glued to his radio listening to the news.
My dog's having an issue here. What's it? Casey, what is wrong? Okay. Just had to get comfy. That's all. That's all it was.
This carnage he was hearing.
Don't look at me like that. I'm sure I have many viewers out there that have animals. I have 4 dogs. I have Mutt, which is my oldest son's dog. Casey, which is my middle son's dog. Thor, which is my youngest son's dog. And then we have the little, which is my wife's dog. Yes, we have a lot of dogs. But Casey is also part of my dog too, because I helped Junior train her and everything else. So stays around me whenever they're not here. But any of y'all out there have that one dog that's just an asshole? Like, no matter what it does, it's doing it just because it's an asshole. That's that one. Even when she breathes like she don't go. She don't go. She goes at you.
Hearing about in Hawaii. And so by the time the president of the United States was declaring war on Japan, Jack had already made up his mind that he was going to join up and he was going to fight for his country. However, there was an issue. Jack wasn't old enough to join the military. You needed to be 17 years old, and Jack was only 14. But this was not going to...
Funny story, a little tangent here. Whenever I was in school, I had a history teacher. He was the only history teacher I actually had that made history actually fun. It was Mr. Knuckles. And he told me one time, he was like, whenever they would go in and sign up for the military and stuff, if they was under the age of 17 or whatever it was at the time, they would write down the age of it and put it in their boot and then tie their boots. That way, whenever they looked at them and say, are you over the age of, say, 16? Yes, I am. They wouldn't be lying because they was technically over 16. Never too late to learn something there.
Jack. So he created this fake document that said he was 17 years old, and he forged his mother's signature on it. And then, after bribing him, he got a notary to sign off on this document as well. And so Jack took his forged documentation, he gave it to the recruiter.
This is a resourceful 14-year-old child. Let me... 14. The worst thing I did at 14 was buy beer. This is some bitch forging documents, blackmail. Yay! You're gonna sign this, ain't you? I love it.
And before long, Jack was accepted into the armed services and was on his way to Marine Corps boot camp. After completing initial training and becoming a Marine, the Marines found out Jack's paperwork was actually fake. But instead of kicking him out of the military, they said, Jack, you can stay in, but under one condition. You can't go overseas to combat. You have to stay in the United States.
Hey, that was nice of him. No, I guess. All right, bud. You've tricked us for this long. You can stay. We just ain't sending you nowhere. Oh, I love this kid. Oh my god. Oh, yeah.
Drive a truck and help out around here, but you can't.
14 years old. They finally figured out. Well, shit. Oh, okay.
Deploy and go to war until you're of age. Jack was not happy about
Hey, I mean, that was nice. Though. They could have just kicked him out and been done, washed their hands, banned him from ever coming back. I don't know how that would work, per se, but damn. You tricked us for this. You can go ahead and stay a little while longer. No war, though. You can drive trucks.
this, but
14 years old out there. Yeah, pull that tank over. Don't hit that button, though. They just don't. Shit, you hit the button.
initially, he did as he was told, and he did just drive a truck around and support it as best as he could. But after about a year and a half, 2 years of this, Jack just couldn't do it anymore. That was not why he had forged this document to get into the military. He had done that so he could actually go fight in the war. And so finally, when he was just 16 years old, he abandoned his post and stuck onto the back car of a troop transport train that was going to another military base. And so when he arrived at this base, which was in California, he hopped off and then ran to the docks where there were these big warships. And he saw one of them, there was a whole bunch of troops loading onto it. And he figured, that's where I need to go. And so he snuck onto the ship and he hid down below. And then after the ship took off and was out to sea, he revealed himself and he walked up to a Marine officer and he kind of played off the, oh, I must have got on the wrong ship, but now that I'm here, can I join your unit? And this officer, who had no idea how young Jack was, eventually said, okay, but prepare yourself because we're going to invade Iwo Jima. Now, Jack had never heard of Iwo Jima and did not know it.
I'm sorry. This kid. Oh, shit. Oh. This kid. Oh, I got on the wrong boat. My bad. Oh, Iwo Jima. Oh, what the fuck that is? But hell yeah. Oh, God. Oh.
Significance. But frankly, Jack didn't really care. He was just glad that he was actually going to see combat.
Oh,
What
he
Jack
gonna see
couldn't have
combat.
known, and what the other Marines on the ship couldn't have known either, is that the battle for Iwo Jima would become one of the bloodiest and deadliest battles of the entire war.
Like I said, he gonna see some battle.
The Japanese that were on this island defending it were absolutely fearless and would not surrender despite being outnumbered, and they were heavily entrenched in these caves and tunnels built in all over the island, and they rarely left these caves and tunnels, which meant Jack and the other Marines, when they landed on this island, the only way they could fight the Japanese was by literally crawling down into these tunnels, which were usually booby-trapped, and fighting up close and personal with the enemy. Jack's ship arrived off the coast of Iwo Jima in February of 19...
Yeah. A lot of dogfights in the trenches. I mean, it's one thing to have high ground. High ground, if you don't hold it right, it can be taken over. But if you're dug into something, it is 10 times harder. It's like the difference in killing a fly and trying to get rid of roaches. You can smack one, it's dead. But to get rid of roaches, you're going to have to crawl in places you don't want to go, do shit you don't want to do. I'm just saying, like, it can get bad.
1945, when Jack was still 16 years old. On February 19th, the first wave of Marines climbed down the side of this big ship down onto these smaller amphibious landing crafts, and then one by one they began making their way towards Iwo Jima to begin the invasion. Jack was not part of this initial invasion. He would be going out on day 2 with the second wave of Marines. And so Jack and all the other second wave Marines just stood at the front of the ship and watched as these amphibious crafts made it up to the beach and then just got completely gunned down by Japanese machine gunners that were lining the beach. And so by the second day, when Jack and the rest of the Marines are getting ready to launch their assault, there are literally thousands of dead Americans just lining the beach. But Jack and the other second...
That kid, bro. I would have shit myself. Like, okay, I probably would have been balls to the wall all the way up until the point where I seen him actually hit land and just all die. I've been like, I'm only 12. I know he's by now, I think 16 now. They said a couple of years he was 14, so he's like 16 now. Yeah, well, I would say I was 12. Like, nope, I'm 12. I'm done. I'm out. I don't give a shit. See, nope. I would have been ripping off everything, taking everything off. Nope. I'll swim back. Don't even worry. Nope.
Marines, they knew this was their job, this was their duty, and so they were undeterred. They climbed down the side of the ship, they boarded their amphibious landing craft, and began the journey towards the island. As they got closer, the Japanese machine gunners opened fire not only on Jack and the boat he was in, but all of the crews that were coming towards the beach. And so hundreds of Americans were just getting gunned down before they even reached the sand. Jack and his crew managed to get to the beach, and so as the gate dropped on their boat, and as Jack is running onto the beach, the men around him are just getting cut to pieces by these machine guns. Jack manages not to get shot, and he, along with 3 other Marines, run up the beach and they lay down in front of the sand dune that protected them from these machine gunners. Jack knew he couldn't stay there for very long because the Japanese were also firing artillery shells onto the beach, and so it would just be a matter of time before he was blown up. And so Jack and these other 3 Marines that had arrived at the same time, they began moving north, doing their best not to get shot or blown up, stopping behind rocks and trees and jumping behind sand dunes. And after a couple hours of doing this, the 4 of them reached the airfield at the northern end of the island. And when they get there, a machine gunner inside of a pillbox. A pillbox is like a small concrete fort that only has openings on 3 or 4 of its sides.
Just stick out guns in that certain direction. It's the way they're angled, like this, where they are bigger here and smaller there, so one can stand and aim this way, one can stand, aim that way, and they get a little bit wider of angle of vision. Yeah. That shit ain't no joke. It's kill or be killed, dog or eat dog. And mad respect for that kid. But I'm pretty sure about the only thing you can really do is run up and through there. If you can't get in it, I hope that you can throw a grenade in through that little hole right there. And hope that they don't get it. Throw it back. All right.
That are just big enough for a machine gun to poke through. A machine gunner inside one of these pillboxes.
Lawnmower. So YouTuber's worst enemy. All right, let's hurry up and get through this before he starts with his leaf blower. So it
notices Jack and the other 3 Marines, and they open fire on them. And somehow Jack and these other 3 Marines managed to not get shot and were able to maneuver and then fire through one of those openings and take out the machine gunner inside. And so now that this gunner is down, Jack and the others see the opportunity to run forward and take more ground of this airfield. And as they're running, other Japanese soldiers in the general vicinity, they see them, they start opening up on them from other pillboxes in other locations, and it forces Jack and these Marines to just jump into the nearest trench to avoid getting shot. And so they're jumping into a Japanese trench, which is a deep hole dug in the ground to protect yourself from
people trying
and as
to
they jump in there, they're expecting to see Japanese soldiers coming towards them, but there weren't any soldiers. But they knew they couldn't stay there for very long because eventually Japanese soldiers would come through here and then they'd get killed. And so they quickly decided their best bet was to basically get out of this trench and run towards the pillbox where they knew they had taken out the machine gunner inside. So they could actually take that pillbox for themselves. And so their plan was they would run towards it and stop inside of each of the trenches along the way to protect themselves because they know there are other Japanese that know where they are. And then once they get to the pillbox, they can regroup and call in reinforcements. And so one of the men Jack was with said, okay, I'll go first. And so he climbs out of his trench as the Japanese...
You gotta love that one dude. All right, I'm going first. Screw it. It's like, oh, thank God. No one ever wants to go first. No one ever wants to go last either. Because you see everything that happens to the first people. It's like, oh, God. Mid-middle. That's... There's only 3 of you. Dead middle. Go second.
They're shooting at him, and he sprints about 10 or 15 feet until he gets to the next trench on the way to this pillbox. And so Jack is watching as this guy jumps into this trench, and as soon as he disappears out of view, this Marine is immediately turning around and scrambling to get back out of the trench. He's trying to run back towards Jack and the other 2 Marines he was with. It would turn out this guy had jumped into another Japanese trench that was full of Japanese soldiers.
Oh, shit.
And landed on top of an actual soldier.
Oh, my God.
Soldiers.
Sorry. That's so funny. That's funny. Oh my God. That's not funny, but it is. No! Oh no! Out of the frying pan into the fire bigger than shit. Yeah.
Were so caught off guard by this, they didn't have time to react and shoot this Marine.
His father. Just raining white people. What the fuck? Okay. Oh, shit. Oh, God. These poor people. I know it's not funny, but it's funny. Oh, yeah.
Where the Marine was able to scramble out and get back to Jack and the others. And then for the next several minutes, Jack and these other 3 Marines opened fire on these Japanese soldiers in this trench like 10 or 15 feet away. And these Japanese soldiers, they too opened fire on Jack and the other 3. Jack was able to take out 2 of the Japanese soldiers before his gun jammed. And so he ducked down into the trench to work on his gun. And as he's down there, he notices there are 2 grenades on the ground right next to him. And so without any hesitation, he yells, "Grenade!" to the other Marines, and then he jumps on top of them, smothering the grenades with his body. One of the grenades was a dud, and so it didn't explode. The other was not a dud, and it went off. The way a grenade works is there is a small piece of explosive that is inside of metal housing that's usually spherical, and this metal housing is the thing you actually hold on to and throw when you throw a grenade. And so when this small explosive is triggered by pulling the pin and releasing the spoon, it detonates and it causes the metal housing itself to be ripped apart and sent flying. Basically, when a grenade goes off, it's like having hundreds of pieces of jagged metal shot off in every direction that are all traveling roughly at the speed of a bullet or faster. And so naturally, a grenade up close is incredibly lethal. In fact, the kill radius of a typical fragmentation grenade is about 5 meters. When the grenade under Jack that was not a dud exploded, it sent Jack flying into the air, and then when he came back down again, his comrades saw him, and they could see he was clearly devastated from all the fragmentation that had been pumped into his body, and so they assumed he was dead. But even if they thought he was alive for some reason, there was nothing they could have done to have helped him because they were actively being engaged by dozens of Japanese soldiers that were only about 10 or 15 feet away. And so eventually, these 3 other Marines that Jack had just saved were forced to leave Jack where he was and retreat back to the beach, and they would all live. The Japanese soldiers in the trench that they were fighting against would eventually come into Jack's trench, but most likely when they saw Jack laying there just completely ruined from this grenade, they assumed he was dead, and so they just kind of left him there. But Jack wasn't dead. He just couldn't speak, and he couldn't see anything, and he really couldn't move, although he could wiggle a few fingers on his left hand. And so for hours, as he lay there in agonizing pain, in and out of consciousness, he just wiggled the fingers on his left hand, hoping an American would see him and know he was still alive. And you got to figure this whole time, it is just constant.
Now it's sad. I enjoyed the laughing part. Fucking Jack. This boy's killing me. He's killing me.
All around him. His chances of survival are incredibly slim. The idea that an American is going to find him and be able to evacuate him is almost zero, and he must have known that. But by some miracle, eventually another American unit did find their way into Jack's trench, and they did notice him wiggling the fingers on his left hand.
Yeah.
So they were able to evacuate him from the trench down to the beach, and from there, under the cover of darkness, they were able to bring him out to a hospital boat offshore, and there he would begin the first of 26 major surgeries to remove the grenade shrapnel from.
Damn. 26 major surgeries? Oh, shit.
Torso, his arm, and his face. Despite his grievous injuries, Jack would surprisingly make a full recovery. And 8 months after his injury, the President of the United States would award him the highest decoration for bravery, the Medal of Honor. He would be the youngest recipient of this award since the 1800s, and to this day, he is one of only a handful of miners to have won this award. Following his departure from the military, Jack would survive a near-death experience while skydiving when both of his parachutes, his main and his reserve, failed, and he just smashed into the ground, but somehow lived. He would also survive a very bad house fire, and he would survive an assassination attempt on his life by his ex-wife. And so naturally, he titled his memoir Indestructible. Jack would eventually die of natural causes on June 5th, 2008. He was 80 years old. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret.
I like that. I like that. It had a happy ending. I like that. Not a respectable old age. Natural. Just fucking Jack. Boy's a true hero right there. Wiggled with his fingers. Little son of a bitch. Wife tried to kill him though. Like, alright. But what? And neither parachute opened. Just, you know, he bounced off the earth. Like, boom, boom. Damn. Alright. I like that. That was cool. Okay. Alright. If y'all enjoyed today's video, think about leaving a thumbs up. They really do help, and I appreciate everyone who has been. Thank you very, very much. And if you're a fan of the scary, spooky, strange, or deranged, think about subscribing. That's what we do. It's about all we do. Yeah. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Fucking Jack. I love it. Love it.